each individual, you know.
But like in Madame Butterfly, Naked Lunch,
Yes.
or Existence, it's three kind of perception of the reality.
Yeah, you can change reality just sitting alone in a room, I think.
So would you make a difference between fiction and documentary? You know that in the 60s that was a big question for filmmakers.
Yeah. Well, it's obvious. I mean, now I think when we see that the news, what we call news, is now entertainment, there's no difference between television news and some kind of strange entertainment, you know. And it's also true, of course, there is no way to record what we call reality by the fact that a cameraman chooses which thing to shoot. You shoot here instead of shooting there, and you edit it afterwards, and you impose a structure on a documentary. It's a created work. It's a sort of it's not more real. I don't think it's at all. A documentary is not more real than fiction film.
Okay. How do you explain this new fashion about the body imitation in our society and art?
This which?
Body imitation,
but
new fashion.
No, but read the sentence.
How do you explain the new fashion about
the new fashion?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just...
You start in the 70s, but like since 10 years, there's, even in Hollywood movies, everywhere, even in creators, in Paris, Jeremy Scott, people like in the fashion area, work on body imitation. So how do you explain that? Genetic experiment?
No, I think it's just a recognition of something that has been here for the beginning of human culture, which is that we have never accepted the human body the way it was given to us. I mean, we change everything. You know, I walk around, like people walk around with things in their ears and their nose, but I have metal in my teeth, you know. So we have modified the human body from the beginning, you know, with surgery, with medicine, with tattoos.
Always this contradiction between being an animal and being a human being.
Yes. I mean, we unlike animals, we see ourselves as a creation, a thing that can be changed, a created thing, that we can change ourselves. And there's always a desire to transcend. You know, we want to transform ourselves into something else. We feel that we could be more than we are. So I think that now in fashion, I mean, it'll change, but at the moment, that fashion really reflects our understanding that we can change ourselves into something else. I mean, we were the first creatures probably in the universe that have realized that we can alter ourselves physically, not just mentally.
But do you have a judgment about that? About the fact that we will be able to change?
Oh, I think it's inevitable. I think it's our destiny, if there is such a thing as destiny.
So what was the influence of the body art on your work? Because, as you might know, in the 70s, Canadian art was very, very influenced by body art. And did you saw performance and stuff like that?
No, not too many, although I've written a script that even goes further with I haven't made the movie yet, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I have written a script that is...
Oh, come on, just a little
it's
bit
called,
well,
it's called Painkillers, and it's basically involves surgery as a performance art, you know, surgery in public.
So when did you discover body art? Late 80s?
It's... you know, not to be too crazed about it, but I feel like I invented it before I realized that it existed, you know. I mean, it seems an obvious thing to me. In fact, the first time that I thought about it was when I was at the University of Toronto in the 60s, 1960s, and a friend of mine wrote a story. He's dead now, this man. He wrote a story about a performance artist who, on stage, cuts off his hand. And that was the first sort of conscious focus I had on the idea of surgery as performance. This was now, we're talking 35 years ago.
You might know that the French artist in '69, Michel Journiat, cut his and make something to eat and give that with the blood and give that to the audience.
Yeah, of course that's a little more like Catholic ritual, you know.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, yes, I remember that not too long after I read this story, that I started to see that there were actual. This man, he was a young student when he wrote the story, invented it, but it was very soon after that we saw that it was really happening. This idea of surgery or mutilation as art, and so the idea has been around in me for a long time.
But you, at that time in the 60s, you're in the underground area,
Yes.
some kind. And I read that you could see like during a day 20 or 30 small
That's
movie
correct.
making.
Yes.
So did you see performance at that time in that kind of thing?
You mean?
Performance recorded that?
No,
No,
none
not
of
at
it was
all.
that. No, it's interesting, but no, it was.
There were no connection between
No.
avant-garde.
No, it's interesting because this in Canada, but also I think in New York. I mean, we saw a lot of New York underground films and films from Los Angeles, and I don't recall ever seeing performance artists recording. I mean, it seems like an obvious thing to do, but in fact, I never saw any of those.
So do you think the body is the place where the world is questioned
Well,
nowadays?
to me, I think it's always been. I mean, always, yeah. I mean, I think that the human body has been the first fact of human existence, and the body has always been, for philosophers, a problem. And so I think the questioning of the universe, and I mean, the first thing that a human does is to understand his body. You know, that's the first thing. How does the body work? When a child, a child has to learn how his body works and what to do with it. You know, it's not like an animal where it's instinctive and there's no teaching at all. So I think it really has always been the battleground, the philosophical battleground, the technological battleground as well.
But for you, is the body the limits of the logic nowadays?
The limits of logic?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that the body is something that we can't basically understand. There's always some kind of parasite of something inside, or disease or stuff that we can't understand.
Oh, I think...
In your movie especially.
Yeah. No, there will never be perfect knowledge. I mean, there will never be knowledge of everything. I think it would be very boring if we suddenly had perfect knowledge of everything. But I don't think perfection is achievable, and maybe not even desirable. It's a process, you know. As we understand the body and its interactions with the universe, that will change. There will be new things and new bodies, I think. I really think, for example, I think that physically we are very different from humans 1,000 years ago. We might even be a different species. We might not even be able to mate with the humans of 1,000 years ago. We might actually be a different species because there have been so many biochemical changes and mineral changes in our body. Yeah.
When you're writing a script or writing a scenario, would you consider the body as a blank page? Because I know that you would like to be a writer first in the 60s. So
Well,
do you think for you the body is a blank page?
Well, that's an interesting concept. Maybe.
I don't know.
It's not conscious.
So why are you so afraid about